Buenas noches, Hatia Ade Yuhan. Thank you for coming here, everybody. This is our first Friday class. We're excited to be able to offer these sessions this term. And it's Friday, January 13th, and I'll go ahead and get started. So just welcome back, everybody. We have a fun day lined up for you today. We'll have our teacher introduction for Shaksani Keek, as well as a discussion. Yesterday, I brought up some of the topics that we'll be introducing during these sessions. And after talking, we decided that today would be a perfect opportunity to talk about some of our intergenerational transmission of language, what our experiences are like, both for Shaksani Keek and myself, in our different experiences and exposure to the Tlingit language, as well as what it's been like for us to become teachers, how we work together, and how that's been. So I'm very excited. Shaksani Keek is able to join us today. Shaksani Keek, you do a sauk, Kagwantan Sitioe, Jil Kat Dach. Ako ahunia ke uawat ak eintanya diawa. Shaksani Keek is known in English as Shirley Kendall. She's Kagwantan from Chilkat, and she was raised in Huna. She is the child of the Dukdane Tan. Her father was from Glacier Bay. And Shaksani Keek, did I miss anything?
No. The language of Tlingit, they call me a fluent speaker. I live up here alone with no one to really talk to, have conversations with. So what happens with that is you begin to lose the ability to carry on a conversation. People come up to me and say, how do you say this? And what should I say with this? And those kind of things I can handle. They do have some sessions in Juneau, and it seems like Gold Belt seems to have a really wonderful program for Tlingit speakers. And so if you're interested to hear, just to sit in and listen to conversations. That's all I knew as a child. I grew up with that, and it was my main way of communicating until school. But they wanted us to stop speaking it completely, and but it was hard to stop us because they had no control over us after school. So it went right back to the way we usually talk to each other. So I worked here in Anchorage as a secondary teacher, and I taught at APU as a professor. Then I taught at the university since the 80s. So after I retired from the Anchorage School District, I got a year, and I didn't do any teaching or any work. And the Indian education supervisor came and asked me if I would like to teach Tlingit. And I said, wow, that was so wonderful. Yeah, I can do it. And yeah, I want to. And and I was telling everybody that I was going to get to do that. After a while, it began to dawn on me how monstrous the language was and where do I start? Had no clue. I just felt so lost. And after um, after I thought about it, I said, "How am I going to do this?" Then my smart supervisor signed me up for a workshop, and it was a teacher from Hawaii. I think he was Hawaiian, uh, and he was doing these little workshops to talk about how to start working on teaching a language. And that was so amazing. It just really narrowed down um, what I had to teach um, to beginning speakers. And there was a large group of people that played in the part of how I have developed what I and how I teach now. And of course, the Downhowers about that time had just finished developing the alphabet for Tlingit language. And that was so wonderful because up to then, everybody was writing Tlingit the way they think it sounds. And so everybody had their own style of writing. And so that was a real mess. People misspelling or mispronouncing because of the bad spelling. So that really helped us as teachers. And they began to have workshops uh, in Juneau, Alaska. So I went down there to join in, and one of the instructors was a classmate of mine from Mount Edgecombe. Her name was Vesta Dominic. Those of you that know her as an instructor of the language and songs, she was teaching spelling. So I took her class, and talk about a strict person. She made us work so hard, and every day we had a complete list of words that we had to work on and use. So I did learn some about spelling, using the correct letters and vowels from her. And I had to learn it fast because that's how strict she was. Not only that, she was my roommate, so we had a lot of talks. Then there was another instructor who was not a native, but he was, he wrote a book on how to teach a language. And he was a lot of fun. We played all those games and did all the wonderful things ideas that he was really full of ideas. So as I went along, it was I was working hard, and I really dove into the Downhauer books and began using it as it was written. What I came to realize about the Downhauer books was that they were not teachers. So it was written, put together pretty fast, and actually went too fast for, even though they had discs and you could listen to it and follow along, but they went so fast you can hardly follow. And I used their method for a while, but finally had to give up because the students had trouble keeping up with them. And then somebody sent me a disc that was developed by Robbie Littlefield of Sitka, and she she is not a native. She was married to a Tlingit, and she was really working hard to learn the language. And she went completely through the alphabet that the Downhauers wrote, and she pronounced every letter, and then she would explain how to say certain letters. And I didn't really pay too much attention. And then I realized, hey, I'm getting some really good clues here for non speakers, English speakers. So I started all over and began to listen really intently to her. And it really gave me a lot of clues about the English brain, English speaker brain, that helped me to the point where I could almost predict the mistakes that the English speaker was going to make. So there was a lot of people involved in my learning how to teach the language and develop the method that I've developed. So, but through this discussion and all the time that I've spent teaching here, I kept hoping that one of the students would say, yeah, I want to be a linguist with native languages only. But nobody, so far, everybody wants to be a biography, or a writer, or teacher, or something. But I'm hoping that somewhere along the way, somebody's going to say, yeah, I think I'd like to be a linguist, because there's so many interesting languages in Alaska, and we need experts in our field. The native language teachers were trying to develop a university of native languages only, but it's pretty difficult, as you can imagine. Where would we have it? Who would teach it? Where we're going to get the money? That kind of stuff. So it's got a long ways to go yet, I think. Anyway, I don't want to take up too much of time from Anna. What time is it?
Oh, yeah, you got plenty of time. It's only 12:15.
Okay, I'm getting there though. So with some help from some fluent speakers from Huna that called me and gave me some ideas about what they felt that they thought was important, and what that was how to introduce a formal introduction that you can do, learn how to do. And that's important because it used to be with the old people, you tell them, my name is Donald, and say, no, who are you? You know, they don't mean who are you with your name. They mean what is your background and who is your mother, grandmother, so on. That kind of information that they feel that's important. And so I've seen it happen so many times, but uh, uh, there is a group in Juneau that is called the Elders uh, Circle, and I got I was able to get on it a few times, but I think I lost the person that has the link, so I haven't been able to join in with them. Where younger people or people that have questions to come and discuss their concerns and what they're learning, and it was pretty interesting to see. I remember one of the things was Robbie Littlefield came, and she developed a game to play with her students, and she went through the whole process. We all listened, and it was mainly to make any suggestions or changes. And it was kind of a fun game. It's like the games that kids play about rock, paper, and whatever it is with their hand game, all in Tlingit. And after I listened to that, it kind of dawned on me that this is a fun activity, but there's no fun things for the kids to say. I mean, as kids, when we played games, we used to yell at each other, "Gook, it's your turn," you know. Don't just stand there, and I'll do it all in Tlingit. Uh, uh, so I told her, I called her back and I told her, you better add some of those for them, teach them how to say it, so so that can be added not to the rules of the game, but just to add to the whole thing. And I don't know if she was able to do it, but it was things like that people brought to the elders to say, check me out on this and see how does this sound, how does this work, and that kind of thing. And I think that's a very important group, and I wish people knew more about it. I wish I could get back on there. I don't know how to do that, but if there's any comments or questions, I tried to hold on to my job as a professor at the university, and the university has a very strong department for teaching a language. They have quite a few languages now. When we began, it was Yupik and Kunkat. So now they have Inupiat and different languages. So, are there any comments or questions?
Buenas ha'inki nigi. Shaksani Keek, thank you for sharing with us. We do have some questions. And first one is from Skinyatla.
I was wondering, Robbie Littlefield Coulier lives in Sitka, and I'm wondering, she teaches she teaches with the Sitka Education Department, and I'm wondering if that was a language group they had there.
I thought that was a university class.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not sure, but that's what I heard. So it was developed for college level students. I might be wrong. I never really checked into it. Um, if you call her, she really is right there to answer. So
Yeah, she's lovely. She's also a mentor to me, and I look up to her a lot for her work through the university and I think the school district as well in Sitka. And yes, do you have a question as well?
Yeah, hi, goodness, Keith. Yeah, I don't have a question, more of a comment. Yeah, she had mentioned Vesta Dominic. She is my grandmother's sister,
yeah,
who I grew up with. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, goodness, geez, for acknowledging her.
yeah. Talk about a smart woman. Really,
Yeah,
real knowledgeable about the language and especially the song music, not the clan songs or anything like that, but all the songs that were translated into English from Tlingit religious ones, as far as I know.
oh, right. Yeah, I've heard a lot of recordings of her. She did a lot of religious recordings and songs in Tlingit.
Yeah, I think her husband, uh, fortunately for us, put all her things up at Fairbanks University, so you can check into it. She was my classmate, her and Verna.
Okay. One of the things that resonated with me when you were talking, Shaksani Keek, was your realization when you started teaching on how monstrous the Tlingit language is and where do you start as a teacher. And I feel that myself now that I'm still a learner, but stepping into my role as teacher. So, what were some of the things that would help you feel brave if you felt daunted by the task?
Um, I I think the first one that gave me confidence was the writings by Down Howard. And I had something to follow, and I followed it faithfully until I finally developed my own system, my own method.
Mm.
So, and I really admire Nora and her knowledge of not only of the language but of the culture. So the books that they wrote were just full. You could tell her input is so great and wonderful.
Mm.
Yeah, there isn't any of those people were who tried to work with us. Um, I don't criticize any of them. People try to sit back and say, oh, well, they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't write it right. But no, they gave it a try, and they were willing to put it down. And we can't, it's not for us to just sit back and say, oh, well, that wasn't a very good book. And that's what See Alaska did, was to grade the books, and didn't make any use of it because some of it was pretty complicated, especially the little noun book that we had that I think is a wonderful resource for things that we talked about. Yeah, it was important, to say, well, I never heard of that, and you're looking there, yeah, there it is.
Mm.
So they're all good resources. Even the Yellow Book. And the first thing See Alaska did was to throw out the Yellow Books. I went in and they said, we're going to get rid of all those books. I just couldn't believe it. I took a whole stack of them. That's maybe that was greedy, but I just couldn't believe that they wanted to throw it away, because there was mistakes in the writing, some mistakes in the writing, but there was no mistakes in the definition. All the verbs that Lance Twitchell loves to talk about. So if you're wondering about verbs, I hope you can get a hold of one. I kept giving away my Yellow Books, so now I don't even know if I have one left. But what a resource that was. The new dictionary that was developed is set up like the verb dictionary. Front of it is Lingit words into English, and then the back half is English words translated into Tlingit. So
Okay. It's really good to hear your insight. And do we have any more questions from our class for Shaksani Keek
I'll take comments too.
and comments? Yeah. Well, you're not limited to right now to ask questions. I'll share a little bit about my perspective as well, and we'll continue the discussion. So you don't have to feel like this was your only chance to ask questions if you have some. But a little bit about my experience and what I'm thinking about after hearing Shaksani Keek is how important relationships are and in language learning and being part of the language community. And so learning Tlingit and being involved with uplifting the language revitalization movement of Tlingit has helped me improve my relationship with myself and it helped me improve my relationship with other people. And so I'm Koyukon Athabaskan and Iyak on my dad's side. So Tlingit is not in my heritage. And because I'm a student and teacher of the Tlingit language, I view that as a lifelong relationship with the Tlingit people and movement. And so I'm here holding space for you. I think learning Tlingit and meeting people in the language classes, the teachers, has been so healing for me as a mixed heritage Native woman in Alaska that I just feel really grateful for what it's done and for what the people of the language community have done for me. But in short, I grew up in Seward, Alaska, and I worked on boats. I'm a lifelong language lover. And when I was a kid, my brothers and I would be playing outside. And before I knew we actually had our own native language, I would look to them and say, hey, let's speak our own language. And we would kind of garble sounds because my mind and my mouth just wanted to speak something other than English. I didn't learn until I was older that we actually have a heritage language, which in my family is Koyukon Athabaskan and Iyak. So anyway, when I was through high school and college, I've studied Spanish, Arabic, Japanese, and then as an adult, I've started to learn my grandmother's first language, which was Koyukon. In our language, we call it Danaka. But I graduated in 2009 with a degree in Japanese. I spent 11 months in Japan. And so I was pretty familiar with the process of learning languages and how to learn them. Where I had to kind of stretch out of my comfort zone was actually learning Lingit and learning Koyukon. For me, they were pretty different because they're highly sophisticated languages. They have a lot of complexity. And on top of that, they're endangered. And so to look something up in Tlingit or to understand what a phrase means is not quite as simple as it might be for an English learner to look something up in Spanish, for example, just because they're so different from English. One thing that did help me was learning Japanese because the word order and sentence structure is also very different from English. It's not the same as Tlingit, but I think learning Japanese forced me to say, oh, okay, the verb goes, the way I think in my brain had to change so that I could start learning and speaking Japanese. And that's also what I experienced in Tlingit. And so when Shaksani Keek mentioned she would look at resources for clues on how the English thinker thinks so that she could anticipate their questions and answer them, I'm like, that just blows my mind because I'm on the other end of it going, how do I think in Tlingit so that my mind is open to hearing and understanding the language and then speaking it? And that's been a big process for me. And I'm here to say that that process has also been hugely helpful in improving my self-esteem. And I'm not sure how, but I guess it's just feeling comfortable thinking in a different way that kind of honors and uplifts my grandmother and my grandfather and where we come from, our connection to the land. I started, I worked on boats for 8 years after college, and then I started learning Tlingit at the University of Alaska Southeast in Juneau. And that was in 2017, and I was 30 years old. So it was a big change for me. But when we were asked to introduce ourselves in Tlingit, I said, oh, okay, I have to think differently about myself from the way I do in my English brain in order to introduce myself in the language, because it's not about me and where I work, what my title is at work, and a silly hobby. You know, in a Tlingit introduction, we uplift our ancestors, where we come from, and our ties to the land, which is really beautiful and really powerful. So that helped me transform the way I think, and from just being like kind of an anonymous person floating around above the land to being having ties to the land and the people of the land. And my teacher introduced me during that time to Kayastan Marie Olson. She's Wushkitan. And I got to interview her, and she had so many impactful stories for me about, she would call it, she would say to me, I want you to learn how to be an Indigenous person of the world. And so I continue to stay grounded in that advice. And it helps me a lot in terms of like, how do I relate as a Koyukon and Athabascan and mixed heritage person who's studying and teaching Tlingit now? What is my kinship to the Tlingit people? How do I relate? And how do I fulfill my responsibility and just have like a lifelong healthy relationship? So that part has been really impactful for me. I was able to take advantage of some very awesome opportunities. Even though I'm not Heritage Tlingit, I was accepted into the Hayuk Atangi Deyi program, which means Our Language Pathways. And that's a partnership between the University of Alaska Southeast and Sea Alaska Heritage Institute. So they accepted, I think, 10 of us in the Tlingit language cohort. There were also people studying Kil or Haida and Smalgach or Simshian. And basically, what I loved about that program was they funded us to go to school full time. It was a full scholarship. It was a tight budget, but it allowed us to put all of our energy and effort into increasing our fluency in our languages, building relationships with each other, learning how to teach, and using methodologies that kind of uplift the way we learn from our aunties and our uncles and our grandparents, so that we're reflecting who we are as Native people in the way we teach language. And so, long story short, I finished that program. I got to work in Hayut Atangi Kuddi, which is the immersive preschool that's owned and funded and operated by Central Council of Tlingit and Haida. And then my baby nephew was born, and I moved back up to Anchorage to be closer to my family and be closer to my new nephew. So I'm really thrilled to be teaching now. I graduated from that program with a certificate in teaching Indigenous languages, and I have goals to take what I've learned from Southeast back home with me. I just applied for a program with my own region with Doyan Foundation for a language teaching cohort as well. And so I'm just really honored to be part of, continuing that ongoing relationship between our regions and doing what I love, which is learning and teaching languages. When I moved back up to Anchorage, I received an email from Tlingit and Haida about this class. And right away I thought, oh my gosh, I'm in Anchorage. So is Shirley Kendall. I knew her from some online classes. And when we talked and agreed to teach together, I just lit up because I was like, this is going to be so fun. I'm going to learn a lot from her because in addition to being a birth speaker, she was a career teacher. So she did a lot of that work to pave the way for us. Like, this is the language and this is how you teach it. And so I'm just following her footsteps, and I'm thrilled. When we meet for our lesson prep, I learn a lot about how we make a schedule, plan a month out. This is what we're going to teach. This is how we'll do it. This is how we structure it. And so when Shaksani Keek mentioned that she followed the works of Nora Dowenhauer, I feel really lucky to just be able to work face-to-face or right over Zoom with her and learn this is how you teach. So thank you for listening to me. And I'm open to questions and comments as well. I'm here to help you so that when you're ready to step into your roles as teachers, if that's an interest to you, I want to help make that possible. So, Gwyneth Cheesh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No, I have a comment.
Uh,
You do have strong ties to Tlingit if you're part EAC, because that's a Tlingit language.
oh, yeah. Yeah, we do have strong ties. Gwyneth Cheesh. Kasang, do you have a question or comment?
Gonna tease you hatangi kayas, you hatangi kayas, you hatang Aktuwa, Aktuwu, that Sinjawe, Chasta Katgao, thank you for your words. Your words make me feel strong every time that I hear them. Cheesh. So just to kind of add on to the teaching, I have been involved in the language since birth. Although my parents and grandparents didn't actively teach me, I have a dream that I have every once in a while where I hear my great uncle and great aunties talking to me that my mother has verified had happened when she was pregnant with me. So I think it was the first time that I ever heard the Tlingit language. And since then, my grandmother, she spoke exclusively Tlingit to my uncles and my dad. So every time they came around, I got to hear my grandma around them speak the Tlingit language. So a lot of my pronunciation comes from back then. And if you ever hear of anybody that has that same story but doesn't speak now, you know, to encourage them to pursue the language would be great, because I think they're dormant speakers. They have the pronunciation and everything just down deep inside of them. And once they start, they'll just automatically be able to make all the sounds without even thinking about it. So I've been involved with the language actively since my daughter went to the Douglas Head Start Immersion Pilot Program back in 1998. A group of us at Head Start, there was some extra money and there was a lot of interest in trying to get started with the language. So, you know, this was kind of our first attempt to go for that. And our kids were in that program for a couple of years. We developed a lot of curriculum. There was no curriculum. I would say that we're probably about maybe 30 to 40% immersion at the time. And it was mostly because we didn't know what to do. I mean, we didn't have fluent speakers other than our elder speakers, and the teachers who were qualified to teach weren't fluent yet, and they didn't have the curriculum. Our grandmother or elder in the class was Anna Katzik, which was David Katzik's mom. I forgot her Tlingit name. And our teacher was Kakashat, which is Florence Shakely. And we got university credit through the class there. And then from there, I just kept on pursuing it over time. And eventually, you know, I took classes. I took the beginning, intermediate, and advanced Tlingit, and then was offered a position to be the Tlingit language researcher at the tribe. And I had an opportunity to work with Agishawu, which is Carrie Eggleston. She wrote the Purple Tlingit Dictionary, and she has the Tlingit Verb Dictionary online. And we went through the Orange Dictionary by Story and Naish, going through each one of these words and verbs, developing paradigms. So, you know, a paradigm is a description of a verb in all its different modes. And so we worked on these paradigms for each one of these verbs, and it became some of the entries that you're seeing on the online version. I have a lot of audio files, which Skinya is aware of, and I would like to get involved with that project. I know that I told her a long time ago we should get together on it, and I just got busy with other stuff. But I think I'm at a point where we can start to dissect those files. I have hours and hours and hours and hours of audio files of Kakwan Each, which is George Davis, which is Lillian Austin, and then, you know, Kakashat and Kingiste, you know, Florence Shakely and David Katzik, and Kakwatu Ish, which is Bill Fawcett, Shapshani Keek, which is March Dutson, and a few others that were also involved with that. So I got audio files that need to be parsed out, and they actually match the verb paradigms that you'll see online. So to get those parsed out would be really cool, because then you would have audio files from elders of those different words. So during the language researcher time, I did have a chance to teach a class at the Northern Methodist Church, which is just right there by the Federal Building. And it's the church where Walter Soboleff used to be a pastor. And I'm not sure if it's still active now, but they would do Think It songs and Christian songs in that church. And that's kind of why we migrated that church. Barbara Sarles and them were part of the committee for that church. So that's how we incorporated that into a classroom. And it was supposed to be like a dinner setting. But the first class that we had, one of the prominent language teachers was trying to have his children be, immersed in a language, and he was trying to have them be birth speakers, basically. And when they came into the class, I had already started, and I was trying to teach them how to say, fork and knife and things for dinner, how to pass things back and forth. And so I was starting to teach them. Well, at first, back up a second. This teacher came forth and introduced himself, introduced his kids, and then he was trying to encourage his kids to speak. And his kids were like, no way, I'm not speaking. I'm not speaking in front of these people. They all look like they speak English, that you could just tell that they were not into it. And then I started to teach the adults in the class, and the adults started to pronounce the words. And I think the first word was plate, so I got to pronounce it sick. And the first person that pronounced it sick, I think. And the little children laughed. They giggled and laughed. And they were laughing for a minute, a second. I asked them to pronounce it again. They giggled a little bit more. And on the third time they pronounced it, the little kids came by that person, pulled them down to them, and whispered in the ear the proper way to pronounce it. And then from that point forward, they started talking. They just started speaking without being cued to do so. So one thing I learned from teaching people is, the children are always watching. They're always watching you. Even though you don't think they're watching you, they're paying attention, they're watching you. And when they walk into a room, they automatically assume this room belongs to English, and that think it doesn't belong there. And the minute that you try, it doesn't matter if you slaughter the language or not, or if you have perfect pronunciation, the minute that you try is the minute that they feel like the language belongs there. And once they feel that, they open up. I've experienced this before. I was a tribal council member, and they were asking me to do a word of the month, because we had monthly meetings. And I did a one on Valentine's, in February, and it was really fun. Got to do love words and stuff like that, and kind of played around with it a little bit, and had everybody laughing and giggling and stuff. And the Kasha Dehani president at the time, his daughter was there, and she was just kind of playing around underneath the tables there at the bingo hall, just playing around, having a good old time. Wouldn't even thought that she was paying attention to me, because she was just off doing her own thing. After the meeting was over, I went to grab plate food real quick, and I was heading on my way out. And then Rhonda Butler stopped me. She was like, wait. She had the mic, and she was like, wait, stop, Kasang, stop. And so I stopped, and I looked over at her, and she says, this little girl wants to tell you something. And she grabbed the mic, and she said her numbers in Lingit. And, it was like one of the greatest moments of my life, I felt, because it made me realize that, again, the children heard the language being spoken and felt all of a sudden that they knew it belonged here. And she was so excited about it that she wanted to share it with me. She wanted to share the language with me. So I guess in parting, and the last thing, I had a martial arts teacher, and he taught me martial arts and was teaching me kind of how to be good at martial arts. And he asked me, how do you become good at martial arts? And I kind of was like new to it. And I was kind of, I don't know. He was all like, practice. And then he asked me, how do you become a master at martial arts? And I was like, I don't know. And he said, you teach. If you want to become a master at something, you teach people. So, both those things together, I think, can work in tandem. Yeah, to really master the language, it really helps to teach someone else the language. And when you're teaching, be sure to have younger folks around that can hear you teaching them, because it encourages them to learn. It makes them feel like the language belongs there and that they can participate and be a part of the language in this place of being important. So gonna teach you gonna teach it gawu owe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your language as well. It's cool to see you improving. I hear you speaking in classes, and it's awesome to hear you speaking, and thank you for sharing.
Who was the gentleman?
His name is Kasang. What's I do with Sak
Andrew Williams, you had to asal lekahena.
No.
Shaksani kik it aktla it jiwo it aktla inach awa kagwantan na khatsati taktain tan yadi eachat ach ish hunadach ka jilkatach ach lish ach ish dutla my grandma Dora Jack ye di hu awe Lingit Class. Her brother and sisters were the Jack families: Charles Jack, Ida Susie, and
Aswasiku.
and my on my mom's side, she's from Klawak, the Demer family, on that side.
Wow.
Sheesh.
Gonna cheese. I was listening to a recording from the 1980s, and there were different people speaking. And I thought it was really wonderful that this lady came out and said, Chanswach Jitwatuati. So that's what you got, Chansi Jitwatuati. Gonna cheese. Hain Kiniki. We don't need to speak all Lingit. We can use some of the neat words from English.
Was that chance iji tutuati?
Yeah, that's what the lady said. Chansachchituati, to speak.
Oh, nice.
And
Chance. I love it.
no explanation needed.
Yeah. Okay.
How much time do we have left?
We're at 4 minutes till.
Yeah. There was a little bit of a discussion about some of the things we want to offer. I have always taught the Lingit language, but also taught the culture, because I found out that the young people, a lot of them have no idea where even the Lingit people were located or any of the history. So that's why I'm so happy to have this Fridays to use that to our advantage to teach the culture. So one of the things that I want to offer is about the 12 young men that started the A&B. I don't want to talk about A&B history because everybody knows that already. But I want to talk about why they started and how it went.
Okay. Yeah, that would be awesome. Should we do that one for next Friday?
We can,
Mm.
unless they made requests for another subject.
The only other requests we had when we discussed this yesterday was dialects up and down the coast, as well as differences you hear in the interior. And then also intellectual property rights, meaning like the culture of respect around clan ownership and acknowledgement for songs, dances, and stories. And other than that, uh-huh,
Or even items.
I,
Atu,
uh-huh,
atu,
okay,
Paul Marx is a perfect person to talk about that.
okay. Well, we can definitely plan for it, and I can see if he's available to join us for a discussion, and then maybe we could plan the timing based on that.
Okay.
Okay. And somebody typed in the chat that the conversation topic you mentioned around the Alaska Native Brotherhood and why they started would also be really awesome to hear.
Okay.
I had another thought after yesterday's discussion about topics that could be interesting for Friday, maybe not next Friday, but another Friday.
Mhm.
Sometimes the culture can live inside the language. There's certain parts of the language that sort of show how people can think in the culture. So I heard things like, maybe in Tlingit, there's not a sort of hello statement type of thing, and maybe that actually gives some insight to how the culture exists, and has existed. And I don't know all the ones that might be the case for Tlingit. I've learned other languages that have these sort of real characteristic ways that people think. They show how people think just by the language itself. And if there's anything that kind of fits into that category, I think it'd be really wonderful to hear about.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely talk about Tlingit Tundatani and how it's reflected in the language.
Okay.
Well, we're up on time, but Shak Sunny Keek, before we close, did you have any more comments you wanted to make?
No, but we're still open to questions, and I still want to put it out there that I'm hoping that somebody will become a linguist. So I think that would be a wonderful opportunity.
Okay. All right, you heard her, folks. We've been told. Well, ik gunaltish hati adi yuhan achtu ik yichsatini. Tsuye kwasatin. Thank you for coming. We'll see you again.
Tsuye Kwasitin.
Rachish,
Cheese, chick, what's the name?
Sheesh.
Goodness cheese.
Ganesh Chish. Ganesh Chish.
Goodness, chief.
Or Ganesh Chish.
Ik sani.